Hello everyone, my name is Naomi and welcome back to my channel. I apologize if I am having a bad hair day. It's more like it's the end of the day. I worked all day. It's time for me to go take a shower, get ready for bed. But I wanted to quick and make a video because it is Monday and I haven't been that great about putting out videos on Monday. And I wanted to talk just a little bit about prepping. I've talked about how I have been moving toward a more sustainable lifestyle, and I'm moving toward becoming a minimalist. And there are some who would say that couldn't possibly work with prepping, because aren't all preppers crazy hoarding types? No. There's a difference between hoarding and prepping for emergencies. I believe that you can take a common sense approach to prepping. You don't need, a whole arsenal of assault rifles and more ammo than you and all your descendants can use in their lifetimes. You don't need to have 5 years worth of food stocked up and rotting. You don't. Being prepared is maybe being more mindful about what you purchase and setting yourself up for a lifestyle where you are not as dependent upon the grocery store. It's not a catastrophe if there's a disaster and you can't get this to the store. If you have a bunch of food on hand and there's a horrible storm and there's a tornado and the power goes out and say you can't leave your house for maybe a week, it's not a disaster if you have food in your house, if you have water, if you have access to the basic necessities. It's not a disaster, and that's what I strive for. So how does that work with minimalism? How can you be a prepper and be a minimalist? Well, for me, it means not wasting money on a bunch of knickknacks and a bunch of junk that I don't need. I don't need to have 50 pairs of shoes. I have 2 pairs of dress shoes for work. I have the pair that I wear every day, plus a backup pair in my desk at work, just in case. Because the first thing that happened my first week of work was my best friend broke a pair of dress shoes, and luckily she had a backup. That's called being a prepper right there, whether she wants to admit it or not. So, but she broke her shoes and she luckily had a backup pair. And then the other girls in the office said, oh yeah, we keep backup pairs too, just in case, because it happens on occasion. You may have something happen to your shoes, or it's pouring down rain and your feet are drenched. It's not a bad idea to have a pair of dry socks and shoes in your desk at work for such situations. That's being a prepper. That is being prepared for circumstances. Or have a spare pair of shoes and socks in your car. That's smart too. If you wear dress shoes to work, what if you broke down on the way home? If I broke down on the way home from work and had to walk a couple miles to get home, I would change into a pair of sneakers and walk home. No big deal. So having a backup pair of shoes in your car is not the worst thing either. So what I did was I had found dress shoes that work for me, and I bought a second pair to keep in my desk at work just in case of emergencies. No big deal. But I do not have a closet full of shoes at home. I usually try to have the shoes I'm wearing plus one backup. Maybe a second backup. I may have the pair of shoes the pair of tennis shoes I'm wearing. I may have a backup pair in my closet and a backup pair in my car, but that is the most. I'm not one of those women that has 50, 100 pairs of shoes. I usually have my main pair of shoes that I'm wearing plus a backup. Now, when the shoes I'm wearing wear out, I switch to the backup, and then I go buy a new backup. It's a flawless plan. And I do the same thing with like my husband and my children. My husband tends to like to wear his shoes till they fall apart. But that bothers me because I don't want, say, his shoes to fall apart and something happen where he can't get a new pair of shoes and suddenly he has no shoes. So I'm one of those people that will, say, buy a spare pair of shoes for him and tuck it away in my closet. So if something happens, then I pull out that pair of shoes and be like, hey, I have a spare for you. So that's how I'm a prepper. And a minimalist. I don't keep large quantities of things that we don't need on hand. I do believe in having a well-stocked pantry and having water filters and a way to boil water or even alternative methods of cooking. So I believe in having all of that. And I believe in having the supplies that would be needed for your survival. But I don't go into, say, excess. I don't have a drawer full of tactical flashlights. You don't really need a tactical flashlight. Just any flashlight will do. Just make sure you have batteries for that flashlight. And also, if you have children, like me, and batteries tend to disappear, I have a backup source of light. Or 2 of them. Or 3. Whatever. I have a bunch of candles. I have a couple of solar lights. They're tent lights. They're these Lucci solar tent lights. Anyway, we have an oil lamp. We have alternative ways of lighting, of having lighting if the power goes out. I like candles for how they smell. They're decorative. I don't have like a basement full of candles, but I do have on a top shelf in the kitchen in one of the cabinets, I have some emergency candles up there. And then I do have candles in each bathroom for decorative purposes. I tend to decorate these days with things that are also useful and serve a purpose. So in the bathroom, on the back of each toilet, I put a basket. I have a candle in there. I have a little pack of matches. And then I have spare bars of soap around in there to look all pretty. And that's how I decorate it. So being a minimalist means that any decorating that I do is usually with useful items that can actually be used and actually serve a purpose. I don't go out and buy knickknacks anymore or decorations. I gave that up. So it's more about being thoughtful about how I purchase and also not spending too much, because another part of being a prepper is that you're setting aside money for emergencies. If we have a medical emergency, we're okay because we can pay for it. You got to make sure if you have, say, a $10,000 deductible and you had a medical emergency and you couldn't work, make sure you have that $10,000 to cover that deductible plus extra in your savings account. Make sure that you always have a cushion, have enough money in the bank that you can live off of if you were out of work for a while. So that's another big part of prepping. And being a minimalist goes well with that, because if you aren't out spending a ton of money, then you are able to set aside money to build up that little cushion there in case of emergencies. So there are many different ways to look at it, and you can live a more sustainable life. You can live a more minimalistic lifestyle and still be a prepper / be prepared for emergencies. Everyone should be prepared for emergencies. You should always make sure that you have what your family needs to survive in case of a disaster. I live in the Midwest. We get a lot of tornadoes here, and we have family on the West Coast, and they get earthquakes there. So, and I do know people down like in the South and along the East Coast, and they get hurricanes. So no matter where you go in the United States, there's some kind of disaster. I grew up in northern Minnesota. Now, when I was a kid, we didn't see tornadoes like you do, say, around here or even farther down south. Sure, they happen, but it's not as frequent. But we had really, really cold winters, and up there, you don't rely on your electricity to get you through in the winter, because you could end up dead. If it's 40 below zero and you don't have power because maybe the power lines got ice on them or a tree broke and fell on them, and ice can get like really heavy and poles can break, things can snap, but you don't rely on that. You have a wood burning stove. So there are just different ways that you prep if you're in different parts of the country. So think about where it is that you live in the country, and think about those disasters that you may possibly face, and prepare for them. It doesn't have to cost a ton of money. It doesn't have to be, I've got a year's or 5 years supply of food. Just make sure that you have enough in the house that you'll be okay if one of those natural disasters strikes you. And there are a lot of people who are prepping for civil unrest, martial law, civil war, war with other countries. You can't possibly prep for every potential disaster. There's no way. So just focus on making sure that you have the basics taken care of to take care of your family in the event that one of the disasters that are common to your area was to hit. And you don't have to spend all of your money, and you don't have to have fancy tactical gear. There are a lot of channels out there that push tactical gear, and they're prepping channels. I'm more of a mixed channel here. I like to talk about prepping, and I do like to talk about being ready for disasters. But I also, honestly, my favorite things to talk about are sustainability and moving towards like a zero waste / reduced waste lifestyle, and even becoming more self-sufficient, learning new skills, how to do things that you can do if you are not relying on, say, a grocery store. My ultimate goal is to move out to the country, grow some apple trees, grow a garden, nice organic garden. I really want my fruit trees. If I had my fruit trees, then I could make my apple cider vinegar. I'd have a ton of apples to do so. I can make very large batches. My batch of apple cider vinegar that I have sitting on the counter brewing right now, it only took 3.5 apples. But once I am ready to use that, it's going to be gone like that. So I can only imagine how awesome it would be to have apple trees and be able to just go out and pick the apples and store the apples and make large batches of apple cider vinegar to get me through the winter, because I love using apple cider vinegar for everything. Everything. So anyway, tell me below in the comments how you prepare for emergencies. What kind of emergencies are in your area, and do you prepare for them at all? Do you keep extra food on hand? Do you make sure that you have filters or ways to boil water, have a source of water? Do you have an emergency medical kit? Tell me below how you prepare, because everyone prepares at a different level. And even if you prepare at a lower level, you can still consider yourself a prepper. Prepping, being a prepper is not exclusively, I buried 6 years worth of food in my backyard in a giant hole or a giant storage container. It's not like that. It's varying levels. Everyone is at a different level, and everyone starts somewhere. So even if you aren't preparing in any way, please start. Even if you start small, buy an extra bag of rice. It's cheap. A bag of beans. It's cheap. Just when you're shopping at Walmart, there's little tiny 1 pound bags of different kinds of beans, and they're usually less than $1. They're like 92 cents or something. Just throw a couple of those on there. Even if you have only maybe $5 a month for prepping, if you have extra beans on hand, that's great. Beans and protein combined make a perfect and complete protein that is more bioavailable for your body than meat. People think that meat is the greatest source of protein. It's not true. Although meat is great, the most bioavailable and the best protein is when you take protein and rice and you eat a dish with protein and rice, because it combines to form the most perfect protein. And there are plant proteins that are pretty darn close to perfect proteins. So if you don't have the ability to buy, say, some expensive cuts of beef, no big deal. Go pick up some beans and rice. They're cheap and you can live off of them. You can thrive on them. So, thank you for watching. Have a wonderful day, and I will talk to you guys later on Wednesday for a sustainability topic, because I got some great topics planned for you guys. Have a good one.